Hi, everyone. I am Dawn Belinsky, Vice President of the Board of Directors of ACLT. I am sitting in for Dave Farr, our president, who's not able to be with us today, but I do have his remarks, and I'll read his remarks, and then, of course, I want to say a couple of words. Welcome to the annual meeting of American Chestnut Land Trust for the year 2021. Because of the enthusiasm of the members of ACLT, having an opportunity to review our progress is always a special treat for me. From the beginning of ACLT, I've always been impressed by the organization's willingness to keep moving forward. I think you will agree that this attitude remains fundamental to ACLT's existence and informs the planning and execution of our activities. The past year continues this tradition, and this meeting's reports will let members see the results of their own participation and how their own efforts fit into the whole of ACLT's progress and accomplishments in the past year. Congratulations to everyone. Now, as the new season unfolds, take advantage of the results of your labor. Explore the trails and meadows of ACLT. Discover the new leaves and the early spring flowers. Notice mushrooms or other fungi on the logs and the leaf litter. Listen to or spot birds and frogs. Most importantly, get out there and have fun. Signed, Dave Farr. Well, for me, I would just like to say that, I joined ACLT because when one learns the breadth of the activities that they do and how those activities benefit Calvert, every single person within Calvert County, I just really wanted to be a part of it. And I'm very proud to be associated with this small but mighty organization that has done so much. Their mission reads, and this mission they take very seriously. It reads that they're preserving and conserving the natural and cultural resources of Parkers Creek and Governor's Run watershed. And that is something that they do take very seriously. And you'll hear all about it in the committee reports, how they've done just that in 2021. So before we begin the meeting, we do have a bit of business that we have to take care of. We have a slate of candidates who've been nominated the members need to vote on this for the board of directors. And each one of these members are already serving members. They've agreed to serve again. So if you could put up the slate of candidates so that the members can see, and I believe we will be voting on them. So it's Dawn Belinsky, yours truly, and Bob Field, B.L. Johnson, Ron Clouda, Robin Truslow, and Ron DeVoe. So if you can see the quiz, the poll that came up on your screen, if you could vote yes or no, and then we will tally those results and get back to us, I'm hoping, before we even start the meeting.
All right, it looks like we have a majority of the responses, and it's a unanimous yes. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone. And let's enjoy the presentations.
We are ACLT, nestled here in 3,500 acres of forest and natural lands. At ACLT, we offer hope, solutions, and actions, all from a seed sown 35 years ago, the formation of ACLT. And also, we see hope due to the work of scientists, conservationists, and economists. You see, we have learned from scientists that there are certain environmental markers, for example, pollutant levels, that must be lowered and maintained to save and restore the bay. Land conservationists have developed tools to better manage lands, promote species diversity, and develop wildlife corridors. And our DNR economists have put a value on the ecological services of natural lands, one of the most exciting advancements in saving the bay and our Earth. And it doesn't stop here. According to a Lincoln Institute report, these groups across the nation and globe are conserving land, protecting water supplies, managing stormwater, addressing sea level rise, maintaining biodiversity, supporting renewable energy, and sequestering carbon. They are showing how land trusts and conservancies are acting at all levels, from local to global. We are one of those organizations, and we are making a difference. Last year, we saw many vivid examples of climate change. In July, the New York Times reported that the temperature reached 116 degrees in Portland, Oregon at one point, and then 121 degrees in British Columbia, Canada. Science researchers have concluded that those levels of heat would have been virtually impossible without climate change. By the end of the year, the vast majority of Americans, 75%, believe that climate change is happening, according to a Newsweek poll, and along with that, attendant anxiety over the future. As further documentation of the extreme temperatures of last year, you may remember the record lows in February 2021 in Texas that created havoc for the electrical system, and then the records mentioned before in the Northwest. The big dots signified not just record temperatures, but temperatures at least 10 degrees more than the previous record. We do not live in a stable climate now, said Robert Rohde, a leading climate scientist. However, on the East Coast, there was again a different dynamic. Heavier rainfall events, slower moving storms which overwhelm stormwater management devices, flooding houses and highways. During 2021, there were 20 weather and climate disaster events that had losses exceeding $100 billion in the U.S. And the total for the year, $145 billion. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, "Today, no nation can find lasting security without addressing climate change. We face all kinds of threats in our line of work, but few of them truly deserve to be called existential. The climate crisis does," he said, adding that climate change is making the world more unsafe and we need to act. When you look at the Parkers Creek watershed, what do you see? Trees, marshes, and meadows. Accompanying climate change are more intense weather events, leading to increased stormwater runoff from urban areas. Higher levels of runoff carry more pollutants. Green infrastructure, being trees, marshes, and meadows, soak up some of that polluted runoff before it reaches major creeks, rivers, and the Chesapeake Bay. In essence, protected lands around towns and cities are becoming essential green infrastructure for saving the bay. You'll be hearing more about climate change and what the Land Trust Alliance is doing from our next speaker. We are excited to have Andrew Swack, the Mid-Atlantic Program Manager for the Land Trust Alliance, who will be speaking next. Andrew manages Mid-Atlantic programming at the Land Trust Alliance. His 20-plus years in conservation spans the eastern U.S. and includes managing governmental affairs for a Chicago-based land trust, managing the Georgia State Land Protection Program, and consulting on planning projects for land trusts in New Jersey. Andrew is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners and holds a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Notre Dame, as well as a master's degree in city and regional planning from Rutgers University. He lives in Baltimore City with his wife and daughter. Andrew, welcome to ACLT.
Good morning, and thank you to Greg Bowen, staff, and board members of American Chestnut Land Trust for having me at your annual meeting today. More importantly, thank you for all the great work that you do. We at the Land Trust Alliance are definitely no strangers to the work of ACLT. In fact, a few of us recently commandeered the raft at your Parkers Creek Preserve, and a very goofy picture of our Chief Program Officer, Southeast Manager, and me should be popping up on your screens any second now. So please know that our community deeply appreciates personally the work that you're doing to protect special places in Southern Maryland. A little bit about what I do. I have the honor to serve professional conservationists at more than 1,000 land trusts across the country. These organizations face just a slew of day-to-day issues, like hostile landowners, hostile politicians, ever-changing legal requirements, strained staff capacity, and so much more. But the big one that is concerning us right now is the unprecedented levels of staff turnover we're seeing throughout the field of conservation. Thankfully, ACLT has an absolutely tremendous staff, and I am so happy to hear that you work so closely with them, because they really are top-notch and make conservation look so much easier than it really is. In addition to helping staff of Land Trust navigate the day-to-day realities of running nonprofits, we at the Land Trust Alliance are trying very hard to encourage and directly support organizations that are tackling some of the biggest challenges in society right now. Specifically, we're focusing our strategic support around work that addresses water, inclusive and community-centered conservation, and climate change. Let me spend a few minutes on climate change because ACLT is really separating itself on this front. I think about climate change a lot, both personally and professionally. Personally, I have a 3-year-old. Now, if she lives out her life expectancy, she'll see the year 2100, a time by when the various climate projections say that the world will look a lot different than it does today. So I spend a lot of time thinking about what, if any, wildlife my daughter will get to see. What, if any, beaches she'll sit on. If she'll be able to find and afford groceries, and fundamentally existential questions like those. But professionally, I see land trusts in a perfect position to provide answers to all the things that worry me and people like me. ACLT alone is doing so much. You are protecting the coastal forests, marshes, and other wildlife hubs that will be bastions of biodiversity going forward. You're figuring out how to adapt to a changing climate through best management practices and green infrastructure. You're even exploring more sustainable ways to grow food. All of these things represent the potential that land trusts have nationally to be real game changers on climate. Where I think ACLT additionally distinguishes itself is how you're advancing what I call social climate actions. You convene watershed friends groups that are engaging and connecting and educating and mobilizing support for your local parks and preserves, those bastions of biodiversity. You hold events outside and bring volunteers in to experience their local environment. You are also exploring and expressing a very detailed yet achievable vision of what it looks like to address climate change in Southern Maryland, and then giving a voice to that vision. All of that is exactly what it takes to overcome some of the remaining hurdles to meaningful, scalable climate action. Action that we will need to take to fend off the worst of what climate change has in store for us and our future generations. We at the Alliance are here to help you continue all this great work. We are keenly aware that natural climate solutions like land protection, reforestation, natural areas restoration, and more are going to be key in this fight against climate change. These natural climate solutions can provide more than 1/3 of all greenhouse gas reductions that are needed to reach the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. What's more is that all of these actions, if we undertake them by 2030, will be cost effective. They'll actually save more money than they cost purely on the basis of the climate benefits they convey. So, the Alliance is offering small grants for climate communications efforts. We're advocating for federal policies and programs that encourage renewable energy development without despoiling natural areas. We're working with for-profit partners to explore how land trusts can access and benefit from participating in climate markets, and a whole host of other initiatives. Our climate website is becoming a go-to resource for what land trusts can and have done to address climate change. That website is climatechange.lta.org, and I hope you'll get a chance to look at it sometime. Again, thank you so much for having me and all the great work that you're doing. I look forward to continue working with you to build a more resilient Southern Maryland and occasionally riding on your raft. Thanks so much again.
Our next two speakers are going to be talking about a very exciting project at ACLT, the Parkers Creek Heritage Trail. Carl Fleischauer retired from the Library of Congress in 2016, where his most recent work pertained to digital library activities and the preservation of content in digital form. Prior to that, he worked at the library's American Folklife Center. He was an ACLT board member from 1988 to 1999 and continues to serve as a member of the Land Management Committee. Kirsty Unila was the Historic Preservation Planner and County Archaeologist for Calvert County for more than 27 years until her retirement in 2020. She now conducts historical research for projects that may include interpretation of historic contexts and engagement with the descendant communities. Kirsty's work is rooted in the belief that the past can be a powerful tool for building better, more just communities in the present.
Thank you. This is Carl Fleischauer. The Parkers Creek Heritage Trail project follows in the footsteps of ACLT's long-term interest in local and regional human history. As early as the late 1980s, our trail maps highlighted cultural as well as natural sites. For example, a cemetery with burials from 1812, a house built by an African-American landowner named Lemuel Wallace, and in a nearby field, the ACLT arranged for Lemuel Wallace's grandson Woodrow to continue to cultivate tobacco until he passed away in 2002. We refurbished a barn in 2009 and won a County Historic Preservation Award. In 1999, we interviewed Bill Tettemer, who'd worked on the pound net fishing operation at the mouth of Parkers Creek in the 1940s. In 1997 and 98, we received grants to carry out a pair of archaeological surveys. These surveys reminded us that people had been connecting with this land for at least 8,000 years. However, we shared this information with visitors in very minimal ways. The Parkers Creek Heritage Trail project will enable ACLT to increase its knowledge of the area and strengthen its communication about regional culture and history. Funding for the project, part of the Southern Maryland Heritage Area, has been provided by the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, part of the Maryland Historical Trust. The research phase runs through 2021 and 2022. An overlapping interpretive development phase runs through 2022 and 2023. The explanatory materials about the Holly Hill property, trail signs, and web pages are the project's first public outreach. Waiting in the wings are the results of studies of land patents from the colonial period, with mapping developed by the researcher Rachel Bissett. This study pays attention to the grantee's religious affiliation Our area saw several patents awarded to Puritans and a few to Quakers. We're also looking at the nearby steamboat wharves that served farmers and occasional tourists, Dare's Wharf and Governor's Run. But let me now turn the podium over to my colleague, Kirsty Unila.
Thank you, Carl. Our research also concerns the mid-19th century farm labor force. For example, south of Parkers Creek, the U.S. government's so-called Census of Slave Inhabitants tells us that in 1850, James Chesley owned 7 enslaved individuals. This census provides ages but no names. In 1860, the number of enslaved had grown to 24. Chesley died in 1863 and is buried in a family graveyard now on ACLT land. Here's a contrasting example. The regular census for the household of Henry Dare, then owner of Holly Hill, includes, using the language of the census forms, free colored individuals. In 1820 there were 2. In 1830, 1. Neighboring households, possibly farm tenants, were also free blacks. It's important to remember that African Americans classified as free were still heavily constrained by Maryland law and custom. This branch of the Dare family were Quakers, abolitionists at least on paper, which may help account for the presence of free blacks. Thanks to researcher Leila Boyer for her help finding information about the Dares. We are also researching land ownership by African Americans in the decades after the Civil War. One prominent farm owner was Joseph Wallace, who had served in the U.S. Colored Infantry in that war. After the war, he bought about 300 acres of land. Joseph Wallace helped lead the formation of Brown's Methodist Episcopal Church. After a 1968 merger, the denomination became the United Methodist Church. Brown's Church was active for about 75 years. Here are some statistics recorded in 1926, but membership dwindled by 1970 and the church was closed shortly thereafter. Many people remain in the church's informal community, continuing to bury family members in the cemetery even when the funeral service now takes place at a different church. We learned about this from 90-year-old Yvonne Wills in an interview conducted by Darlene Harrod and Shirley Knight, project researchers, who are also ACLT board members.
Well, tell us who's buried up at Brown's United Methodist Church in your family.
All right, our stepmother, Mary, and my dad. Then the next was my brother Harold. He went to Sixers Road down here at Barber Way, but we buried him out there because he named after Daddy. Then I buried Leroy out there. Leroy's funeral was preached down here at Carl Weston.
And who was Leroy?
My husband.
The one you married.
Him?
I know, but they want it for the records.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's buried out there. Then Clover lost her son, and he's buried out there, Trayvon Wills. And then we bought Carl there. Now we could have buried Carl other places, but we wanted the family to be together.
The United Methodist Church gave Browns to Gladys Jones for the purposes of preservation. Gladys is a member of the extended Wallace family, and she leads a community group planning the restoration of the building. ACLT is supporting this effort. All parties agree that a refurbished building would be a great historical site on the Heritage Trail, as well as serving as a neighborhood community center. Thanks. That's our update on the Parkers Creek Heritage Trail project. We're pleased with progress thus far and look forward to the years to come.
Hi, this is Dawn Belinsky again. Since Dave is also the chair of the Land Acquisition and Preservation Committee, I'll be reporting for this committee. We are thrilled to announce the purchase of the GRDC Yowl property, that's the Governor's Run Development Corps, which is a beautiful piece of land located between Kenwood and the Gravit tracts that we also own. Being as heavily forested as it is, and also with a portion fronting the bay, the calculated ecosystem value of the property is close to $200,000 per year, which is what happens when you price out the benefits of the natural environment, such as carbon sequestration, wildlife habitat, and the trapping of nutrients. This is a nice overview of the GRDC Yowl property in the foreground here. And this new addition joins up with existing ACLT properties, forming almost 5 miles of protected lands that parallel the bay. And we're very close to the purchase of the Yo property, which is on Route 4 next to the Adams Rib Restaurant. The farm on the property was the largest unprotected farm in our watershed, so we are very pleased to bring it and the heavily forested parcel into preservation. Settlement will hopefully happen around May. Our preservation efforts extend beyond looking to purchase properties. ACLD has been working with county government to expand the number of properties within rural legacy, which can attract state funding in the protection of rural landscapes. The newly designated areas in Calvert are in blue, and some more proposed properties are in orange. We've also worked with the Sustainable Calvert Network and the TDR Committee to successfully convince the county to increase funding for their own land preservation program. Looking at land preservation on a regional scale, in October, working with other organizations, ACLT took the momentous step of launching the Southern Maryland Conservation Alliance, a very strong coalition, as you can see from the participants pictured here. The group has already mapped out priority preservation areas for the 5 counties and has set a goal of protecting 30% of all lands by 2030. So altogether, it has been a great year for land preservation at ACLT.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Place, ACLT's treasurer, here for a quick and painless discussion of the state of the organization's 2021 finances. This first slide is a comparison of ACLT's finances at the end of 2020 and 2021, 2 years that ACLT contended with the strictures of COVID. While it appears that contribution and memorial revenues suffered this year compared to last, ACLT donors also contributed cash to the 2021 Land and Stewardship Campaign, making 2021 a very successful fundraising year. Those campaign revenues are not reflected as operating income. Events income without the annual auction revenues was still a healthy $19,000, all the more outstanding since almost all events were held virtually. In 2020, ACLT received a $46,230 loan from the federal government as part of the CARES Act Payroll Protection Program. ACLT used the money to pay salaries during the pandemic, but because it was a loan, the money was recorded as a payable to the government. In 2021, ACLT received notice that the loan was forgiven, so monies were recorded as other income this year. Year-end expenses were 2% under budget, but higher than 2020 expenses, primarily because the costs incurred to fulfill grant requirements are unbudgeted expenses. Notice that 2021 grant revenues increased by over $35,000. ACLT's invested accounts shown under year-end special fund balances all profited from a strong 2021 stock market. Contributions collected for the Land and Stewardship Campaign were deposited in the Land Acquisition Fund, thus the significant increase in that account. The ACLT Board of Directors approved the use of $40,000 from the Building Fund to restore and protect the historic Holly Hill Barn. Looking at the pie chart for 2021 revenue, you can see that the endowment, grants, and a combination of membership contributions and program revenue provided about 1/3 each of ACLT's annual operating income. For the past few years, as large grant income declined and contribution income grew, contributions and membership revenue contributed almost 50% of ACLT's operating income. But because of the 2021 increase in grant income and the competition with the Land and Stewardship Campaign for donor dollars, this changed. The pie chart for 2021 expenses is notable for only one thing. It depicts that 83% of ACLT expenditures are for its mission of protecting and preserving land. Only 17% of its monies are used to cover administrative and fundraising costs. And with this, my presentation is complete, and I thank you for your attention.
Hi everyone, I'm Denise Breitberg, and I have the privilege to chair the ACLT Science Committee. We provide advice and expertise to ACLT to help ACLT meet its goals and challenges in protecting and preserving this incredible land. Our strengths in the generosity of researchers, some of whom live far from the watershed, who share their knowledge and time. Over the past year, Science Committee members have helped staff, interns, and volunteers build vernal pools to enhance habitat for frogs and salamanders, worked on methods to restore marsh vegetation after invasives have been removed, monitored bird populations, counted deer, and connected ACLT to additional researchers with needed expertise. I thought at this meeting I'd share some more details about just a few things we've done that really are good news stories about this land that we love. The first piece of news is from the work of Laura Harris, an associate professor at the Chesapeake Biological Laboratory and a frequent trail hiker and volunteer at ACLT. Her research in the salt marsh at ACLT brings us some good news about how our land is faring in the face of climate change. A big challenge in our warming world is that sea level is rising relative to land. We live in a part of the world with very high rates of relative sea level rise because of a combination of warming that's melting glaciers and ice caps and affecting ocean currents, and subsidence of the land. Survival of salt marshes depends on their ability to keep accreting land and expanding vertically at a rate fast enough to outpace the rising waters. Laura's research that requires painstaking measurements with sediment elevation tables over many years is showing that, at least so far, our marshes have been able to keep up with and outpace the rising seas. Relative sea level rise rates for Parker's Creek are from 4 to 7 millimeters per year, while sediment elevation is increasing, at least for the past 4 years, from 6 to 14 millimeters per year at the 4 monitored sites. 2 of the 4 sites are accreting and rising in elevation at almost twice the maximum rate of relative sea level rise. The second snippet focuses on the health of waters that run through our watershed and an effort led by Walter Boynton. Walter, Autumn Phillips, and Alyssa Manton, and an impressive crowd of volunteers checked the health of our streams in the annual Water Quality Blitz this past April under beautiful blue skies. The volunteers sampled 27 sites in the Parkers Creek watershed, as well as some sites in St. Leonard and Hunting Creeks. It was an amazing effort and a great success. Volunteers spread out across the land collecting water samples that were then analyzed at Chesapeake Biological Laboratory to determine their nitrogen content. A bit of nitrogen is critical. It's absolutely necessary to allow the microscopic algae that are the base of the Parkers Creek aquatic food web to thrive. But too much nitrogen, over-fertilization of the waters, can result in too much algae, and algal blooms block light and cause low oxygen, degrading habitat needed by fish. The good news is that nitrogen in streams in the Parkers Creek watershed is at safe levels. Only 2 of the 27 sites, the ones that drain from the farm fields at Holly Hill, have nitrogen at worrisome levels. The final effort I want to mention that the Science Committee played a major role in is the production of a report card describing the health of the Parkers Creek watershed, including the lands protected by ACLT. This really impressive effort was led by Bridget Sharp, and instead of me taking more time talking, I want to turn the program over to Bridget so she can show you this exciting accomplishment.
Good morning. I'm super excited to announce the release of the first Parkers Creek report card.
Like many of you, I have enjoyed countless hours wandering the hills and valleys of this watershed. But by working on this report card, I have come to learn so much more about this special place and its value to us all. From what's on the land, to water quality, and even how people connect to the land. I'm going to take you on a quick hop and a skip through the report now, and we will end with a look at the risks that threaten this watershed. Natural lands provide services to keep our Earth livable. They clean our air and water, support wildlife, including pollinators needed for our food production, protect us from floods and droughts, and reduce climate change. These are called ecosystem services, and they're free, so long as you have an ecosystem. Because of that, natural places have been deemed so important that the World Conservation Congress of the IUCN has called for the protection of 50% of the Earth's lands and seas, with a minimum of 30% to be protected by 2030. You may have heard of the 30 by 30 movement. Currently, only 15% of the Earth's lands are protected. However, the good news is that in Parkers Creek watershed, ACLT has protected 58% of the land. Every watershed is a mix of developed agricultural and natural lands. We need land to live on and to feed us, but these put pressure on our air and water. Parkers Creek watershed has a good mix of land uses because the impacts of farmlands and a major town center are mostly offset by natural lands retaining ecosystem services valued at over $7 million per year, according to the Maryland Greenprint website. Every year, ACLT preserved forests and wetlands keep literally tons of pollutants out of our air and water. They sponge up millions of gallons of rainwater, replenishing aquifers that feed our wells and rivers and protecting us from floods. They provide habitat for wildlife, including several endangered and at-risk species, and they absorb tons of carbon, helping us in our fight against climate change. Every developed watershed has impervious surfaces. These are hard surfaces, like roads. They keep rainwater from sinking into the ground. They collect the rainwater and rush it off into the nearest stream so that aquifers don't get fed and wells can go dry. They also cause erosion and flooding and increased pollutants in our waterways. Life in our streams is vulnerable to even small amounts of impervious surfaces. Right now, Parkers Creek watershed is pretty good in the amount of impervious surfaces it has, but bit by bit, each new development threatens this. Riparian buffers are naturally vegetated lands along waterways, like the trees you see along the stream. They protect waterways, keeping them cooled, filtering out pollutants, and stabilizing the stream banks. The Chesapeake Bay program has set the goal for 70% of all Chesapeake watershed streams to be buffered. 92% of this watershed's streams are buffered, giving it an excellent rating. Nitrogen and phosphorus pollute our waterways, leading to dead zones and the loss of keystone species. Overall, Parkers Creek watershed has excellent water quality with very little of these pollutants. ACLT connects people to the Parkers Creek watershed in many different ways. Being outside makes us healthier and more likely to protect our valuable natural spaces. While Parkers Creek watershed is currently in pretty good shape, it has its share of threats, from climate change to invasive species, and unfortunately current plans that could mean that the number of Prince Frederick households would increase over 800%. The Parkers Creek report is available today for you to see using this link or on the ACLT website. Please check it out to learn more. Thanks to the ACLT Science Committee, an amazing cohort of local science experts who have completed many surveys that informed this report. And special thanks to our report card team who spent a year sifting through data to help paint a picture of this watershed. And to the ACLT staff who answered and re-answered questions, worked and reworked graphs and maps, edited and put up with many, many rewrites.
My name is Autumn Phillips Lewis, and I'm presenting on behalf of the Land Management Committee, which is chaired by board member Bob Field. As usual, we had an extremely busy and productive year in land management in 2021. Early in the year, we jump-started one of our major restoration efforts by conducting a controlled burn in the North Field at Double Oak. DNR Forest Service staff conducted the burn to remove thatch buildup and spur the growth of Chinese Lespedeza seeds in the seed bank. This allowed us to have a bigger impact on this non-native invasive species when we applied herbicides to the area in the summer. These steps are necessary to prepare the site for planting with a native wildflower and grass seed mix. Other meadow restoration work included completing the third of 4 planned meadow buffer plantings in the fields around the Holly Hill property. Speaking of the Holly Hill property, quite a lot happened there this year. Throughout 2021, we installed the new Holly Hill Trail, which is 2.2 miles long and traverses the forest, streams, meadows, and ag land on the Holly Hill property. The new trail also passes by the historic Holly Hill barn. Many probably remember that the barn was leaning badly and at risk of falling down when ACLT purchased the property in 2017. Stabilization efforts were started in 2019 and were completed in 2021. A viewing platform was installed at one end, and signage about the history of the area has also been installed. The collapsed barn next to the stabilized barn was removed, and the area was cleaned up so that it could serve as the location of ACLT's 35th anniversary celebration. And finally, for the Holly Hill property, land management staff and volunteers took on the task of renovating the house on Holly Hill after the longtime tenant moved out in early 2021. We did a deep cleaning, repainted the entire interior, and installed new kitchen cabinets, appliances, light fixtures, and flooring. Back out on the land, we continued our invasive species control, and this year spent a lot of time trying to eliminate a new invader, wavy leaf basket grass, before it gets out of control. We engaged our regular volunteers, scout troops, and an outside ecological services company to devote extra resources to this new threat that could change the understory of our entire preserve. Of course, much time was also dedicated to our routine land management tasks that we carry out every year. We monitored every fee simple property and every property on which ACLT holds a conservation easement. We wrote detailed reports for each property, and they were submitted to the Land Trust Alliance as a part of the requirements to maintain our national accreditation. We also maintained boundaries and took action when trespassers caused significant ATV damage on the Kenwood property. The ACLT hunter who discovered the damage alerted local deputies, who paid a visit to the trespassers' residence, and ACLT installed additional signage and natural fences to prevent motorized access. In 2021, we also updated the Master Land Management Plan and ensured that we met the habitat improvement goals that are listed in the forest stewardship plans for each property we own. Forest stewardship plans call for activities such as invasive control and wildlife brush pile creation. Our sustainable agriculture efforts on Double Oak were successful in 2021 as well, as we extended our winter growing season by using the high tunnel, replaced the plastic on the high tunnel, and donated a wide array of produce to St. John Vianney Food Pantry that totaled 3,296 pounds. In the food forest, the fruit and nut trees are maturing, and 2021 was the first year that we were able to send fruits and nuts to the food pantry. These included blueberries, blackberries, cherries, figs, persimmons, hazelnuts, and peaches. Last year, we also began working towards a solution for the massive erosion that is happening at the edges of the agricultural fields on the Holly Hill property. We met with a design-build firm who has developed a concept plan for implementing a nature-based restoration project called a regenerative stream channel. ACLT staff has applied for 2 large grants in an effort to get funding for this project to prevent nutrients and sediment from being transported down the Horse Swamp stream and into Parkers Creek and the bay. If you'd like to learn more about this exciting project, join us on the hike following this meeting, where I'll be there to show you the infamous Grand Canyon and tell you more about the design. Additionally, ACLT hosted its 9th annual Maryland Master Naturalist class in the spring of 2021. 19 new Master Naturalists graduated from this 16-week educational program and have now joined ACLT's large volunteer force. Combined, the active Master Naturalists from all of ACLT's 9 Master Naturalist classes completed a total of 4,146 volunteer hours at ACLT in 2021. Additionally, ACLT's 30 hunter volunteers completed a total of 662 volunteer hours at ACLT last year. As always, I want to end by thanking all of our amazing volunteers. In total, volunteers donated 6,696 hours of time maintaining trails and equipment, building and monitoring bird nest boxes, removing invasive species, growing food sustainably, improving our buildings, parking areas, and other infrastructure, and completing all of the miscellaneous land management projects that are required to maintain 24 miles of trails and 3,500 acres of land. ACLT would not be able to accomplish all of this without you, and we are so grateful for each of you. Each year, we like to take a chance to recognize our volunteers who really go above and beyond in supporting ACLT. The people who volunteered over 100 hours in 2021 are Sharon Brewer, Peggy Cook, Jan Dageneff, Jim Dageneff, Kevin Donahue, Bob Estes, Judy Ferris, Bob Field, Kathy Fouts, Susan Helmrich, Dale Hutchins, Liz Lahr, Penny Moran, Pat Morrison, Liz Orlandi, Ken Romney, and R.T. West. Thank you so much for your dedication to ACLT. You all mean so much to our organization, and we appreciate all that you do.
Hello, this is Miriam Gohl, Community Relations Manager for ACLT, and I am pleased to present the work of the Outreach and Membership Committee in 2021. The lingering pandemic took us all on a roller coaster ride in 2021, but our committee was far from idle. We had a remarkably successful year, remaining engaged with and expanding our reach into the local community. ACLT's 2021 calendar of events included 8 on-site events, 6 virtual events, 5 off-site events, 1 volunteer appreciation event, and 2 volunteer training sessions. Interspersed among those events were 12 guided canoe trips, 5 guided hikes, 12 members-only full moon hikes, and the weekend welcome program. None of what I am about to present would have been possible without the dedication of this lively group of enthusiastic volunteers under the leadership of Penny Moran, chairperson. ACLT's dedicated volunteers are a key to our success. Numerous volunteers support our events, but they do so much more. For example, last year, one of our farm volunteers introduced a very popular series of 10 blogs about the secret lives of insects. Another very creative volunteer began painting rocks that were hidden along the trails. Hikers were thrilled to find them and posted photos using the hashtag ACLTRocks. Another volunteer created new online games that allow children and adults to try their hand at nature trivia while visiting ACLT's booths at on-site and off-site events. The games have thus far been extremely popular. Our weekend welcome program volunteers were also active, greeting over 500 visitors at our north and south side trailheads, answering questions and sharing information about ACLT and the trails. In April, we conducted volunteer training for hiking guides and weekend welcomers. At least one training event is planned for 2022. In December, we showed our appreciation to the volunteers with a winter solstice-themed dinner and gave out commemorative cookie tins containing homemade cookies. We began the year with 2 new events, one virtual and one in person. For Valentine's Day, Hike for Your Heart was held virtually, with hikers searching for paper hearts hidden along the trails. The paper hearts were made by hand with recycled paper embedded with native wildflower seeds. In March, we hosted a 2-day live event, one at each trailhead, celebrating St. Patrick's Day with a leprechaun hunt. The event was based on the book The Story of the Leprechaun. Children searched for clues in a field of shoes to find the pot of gold. As always, Earth Day was celebrated in a big way with a virtual as well as a live 5K race. Our volunteers also picked up trash along ACLT's 2 segments of roadways, which we have adopted through the state's Adopt a Highway program. We were able to host our popular Sip and Save beer tasting event in September with over 200 attendees. The weather and the beer were perfect. Sip and Save was also the kickoff for the 2021 Land Acquisition and Stewardship Campaign. Pictured clockwise, the campaign booth and displays, Greg Bowen followed by Robin Truslow speaking to the crowd, and board member Darlene Herod posing with Francis Jones representing Brown United Methodist Church. Our annual Parkers Creek Challenge was held in October. This year, 3 member relay teams were invited to compete in the challenge. The winning team came from Prince George's County, having heard about the event on Facebook. Social media is playing a major role in getting the word out about ACLT and our events. Throughout the year, we celebrated ACLT's 35th anniversary, culminating on December 4th with an outdoor celebration and Volksmarch. 200 attendees hiked from all 3 trailheads, traversing the brand new Holly Hill Trail and meeting at the newly stabilized Holly Hill Barn. The event officially opened the barn to the public as the first of many stops on the Parkers Creek Heritage Trail. The photo at the bottom was taken soon after ACLT was formed and featured in the November 1988 edition of National Geographic. The photo on the top is a reenactment of the first photo and was taken by Carl Fleischhauer at the 35th anniversary celebration. Our most successful virtual event would have to be the 12 Hikes in 21 Challenge, where participants were encouraged to hike at ACLT once a month, every month throughout the year. A total of just over 2,000 people participated, with over 200 completing the challenge. The ACLT Hiking Facebook group has over 750 members and is extremely active, sharing beautiful photos from their many hikes. Many participants are new to ACLT, having discovered our trails during the lockdown at the beginning of the pandemic. In 2021, we saw an increased number of participants at events and an increased number of trail visitors, estimated to be approximately 74,000, a 9% increase over 2020. Representing ACLT at off-site events offers excellent opportunities to reach community members who may not be familiar with us and to network with other nature organizations for our mutual benefit. In 2021, we participated in Jefferson Patterson Park's Birding Trail Kickoff event, Anne Marie Garden's Green Living Festival and Insectival, and the Farm Heritage Conservancy's Sunflower Festival. We also welcomed the Calvert Library, which set up a story walk along the Griffin Meadow Trail. In all we do, the ONMC strives to meet the goals of the 5-year plan by increasing membership. In 2021, we expanded the member benefits package to include free canoe trips, merchandise discounts, exclusive members-only events like our full moon hikes, early and discounted event registration, and unique gifts. To go along with the benefits package, a new member survey was created and is automatically sent out to each new member. The survey gives us insight into the background of our members and their interests. We ended the year with 820 members, a 9% increase over 2020. ACLT continues to take on a leadership role in the fight against climate change. At today's meeting, you have heard presentations about how we are continuing to focus our efforts on preserving more land and protecting our watersheds, serving as an example for others. This year's theme is derived from the saying most often attributed to Mahatma Gandhi that we must, quote, be the change we wish to see in the world. We hope you will join us in our efforts to fight climate change on the local level. Together, we are making a real difference. In addition to another full calendar of events, the ONMC has undertaken several projects that we expect to complete in 2022, including an online learning center and helping to revamp signage at the north and south trailheads. We are looking forward to holding the annual dinner and auction on October 23rd with a fun and exciting chili cook-off, so mark your calendars. Please be sure to check us out online and follow us on social media.
Good morning from the Admin and Fundraising Committee. You probably recall that we had a very generous fall appeal in 2020. I'm happy to say that was just our donors warming up for an even more generous 2021. Beginning in the spring, we started our 3-year land and stewardship campaign to fund the purchase and preservation of 240 additional acres in the Parkers Creek watershed. In just 1 year, we have pledges exceeding our goal and will be able to move forward with solar panels, the Brown Church Restoration Project, and of course, the land purchases and stewardship necessary for those additional acres. And while the campaign will continue over the next 2 years, You were generous enough in year one that we will not need to take out a loan to close on the Yo property. I'm also excited to tell you that we had donations that rose to the level of stream naming rights. So many of our numbered streams will soon be identified by name instead. So keep an eye out for that development. And even without a spring appeal and fall auction, we were able to exceed our budgeted income goals for contributions and events with a year-end appeal. This was kicked off at the 35th anniversary celebration at Holly Hill with an energetic paddle raise that dozens of donors took part in to raise over $30,000 in just a few minutes. You can see the dark green is the general fund donations for the year, and the light green is the land acquisition and preservation fund from the campaign. One of our committee's goals this year was to increase the number of new land and general fund donors by 10%. We did, in fact, add 99 new donors. Those are the red bars on the graph. 52 of those new donors were actually new land preservation donors. And while that did beat our goal, 99 is a terrible stopping place, right? So please talk up ACLT with your friends. Let them know why you support us. Bring them on a hike, invite them to one of the great events that Miriam and Penny and their committee put together. Just help us grow our supporters so ACLT can do more of what you love us for. Also, keep an eye out for possible cookbook fundraiser. Let me know if you want to join in the fun of putting that together. We'll feature ingredients from Double Oak Farm, local watermen, hunters, and gatherers. Imagine that potluck. And really, the main message is, thank you so much for your continued generosity of the support and support for the exciting work that ACLT does to protect our land, our watershed, and our quality of life.
Hi, this is Greg Bowen. We are the change. In all the times of uncertainty and the global traumas that are going on, we are the change and we're making things happen. But we need to hear back from you. So we'll be emailing a brief survey to all participants after the meeting. Please take a couple of minutes to let us know how we're doing. If you have questions, you can submit them on the survey, and then we will get back to you. All information presented today is available on the website at www.acltweb.org. Click on the annual meeting banner. We also have a land acknowledgement here. Something else that we are pursuing. We have to acknowledge who's been here in the past. We have to acknowledge past relationships in order for us to be effective and be the people that we want to be in this community. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being with us today and with us throughout the year. And those of you who can attend, please come for the hike today. The lunch for those of you who've already purchased is at 12:30? 12:30, and then the hike starts around 1 o'clock. So it's a beautiful day outside. Come to us if you can. Otherwise, hope to see you soon.